Riddle me this. Not all black people are black people or black people, but all black people are black people. Now let me explain. See, the problem is the modern uses of the term black. It is polysemous as it changes context depending on the usage when applied to people. Race theory would have you imagine that Europeans being lily white was white, are Caucasian, right? Africans being black as licorice are predominantly African because they're black. And Asians being, we'll just simply say Asian because yellow didn't stick. Even though there's the push for brown people, even though most being what we would call tan, twani, So these are legal frameworks and socio-political identities that have their origins in integrated models of race that does not reflect modern ethnicities in any shape or form. The truth is, black identity has lost its original context. It is lost in classification models. It was originally used descriptively throughout history to describe someone as an adjective. Well, this person is black as hell, black in color. In societies where everyone is dark, delineations like this were rendered useless. Modern Indians and many other Asian populations can be dark in color but not labeled or identified as black despite being darker than most other quote-unquote black populations. The reason we have these conflations is because the one word out of a need of political correctness is being used to describe multiple different concepts and in different contexts is changing from descriptive identifiers, classification models, and across different societies and cultures. It is all wrapped up in phenotypical conflations, not to mention the history of identifying with black as an identity and classification in certain societies. It's like how we use the term Negro in English, although it is an Iberian term. I guess we could start here. Blackish, Negroid, blackamoor was meant to be used as the term Negro, which was basically someone with tropical adaptations, dark skin, long limbs, thick lips, broad noses, those resembling Negroes. It's the same as someone saying, looks like an African, must be an African, right? Then there's the racist geopolitical term of sub-Saharan Africa. Sub-Saharan Africa is a delineation of the African continent. It is the political correct term for Black Africa, which they moved away from in the 1960s. But in this context, it wasn't limited to just race theory being applied, but a more insidious framing that meant uncivilized. Sub-Saharan Africa is euphemism for African descent. The creation of race theory led to many models of race, and one in particular used the classification of Negroid that meant like to or resembling their contemporary understanding of a Negro, tropical, adapted features. The descriptor became a classification that had one meaning, African, that meant African descent or African-like. Context is delineated in some cases, and context is combined in others. Hey, these people are Asian, but are Negroes. Was it because they descended from Africans? Or is it because they have a convergent evolution? They must be African. They don't look Asian. Dylan, they're black. They're just niggers. Niggers in Asia. Then there's black, the legal identity in America that was intricately linked to the social, cultural, ethnic identity of American Negroes, regardless of status, regardless if they were enslaved, free, or indentured, regardless if they were Aboriginal Indians. They popularized the black identity as an ethnic identifier in America to move away from the terms colored, which really meant non-white, and Negro. The Black Power movement is responsible for this, and it had elements of black power and pride and often overlapped with nationalism and Pan-African concepts. The Black Power movement in America was exported to places popularizing Black identity in general. This happened in two instances, one during the 60s and one during the Black Lives Matter movements of the 2010s. The OG Black race was understood to be the original race of the planet. This will have consequences as other cultures delineated from this ideal, while some embraced this label. Nowadays, post the transatlantic slave trade, post the political movements, the Black Lives Matter, Black is now understood to mean African or African descent or African-like. And the allegorical imagination of race theory when applied to groups in modern times, even though that was not always the case, Black did not always mean African. The European imagination, the European lens when exploring these places, what point of reference did they use? The conflations between Negro, Negroid, African, Sub-Saharan African, and Black displays the racist tendency to homogenize cultures under an umbrella that has been proven to not be there, and have only existed via Eurocentric views to serve their colonial classification systems. To them, if you look like a nigger, then you are a nigger, until they don't need you to be a nigger. Because if y'all niggers start uniting, then we're going to make sure you're divided. It's all a word game, ultimately. Not all Negroes are African or Black American, but all Negroes are tropically adapted humans. We have Black the description, Negro, Black the geopolitical identifier, African and Sub-Saharan African. We have Black racial classification, which is Negroid, and we have Black social, cultural, ethnic group in America, Black Americans. It is important to recognize the differences between these groups that are being conflated. We are witnessing a modern attempt to rewrite and whitewash history. It erases context in the process, and context, no matter how small, is important. All these redefinitions, reclassifications, shifting viewpoints should all be acknowledged and recognized as what they are. You know, sometimes it feels like an identity crisis. What the fuck have they really done, you know? Moor, Blackamoor, Ethiopian, Black, African, Negro, niggers. You know, all of these will always be Eurocentric social instruments, no matter how they are deployed, no matter how they are used.